Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to unpack the incredible economic weight and, let's be honest, the intense personal drama that fuels the world of family businesses. We all know the mega brands, right? Companies like Walmart, Ford, or Samsung. But the internal mechanics of how these multi-generational empires actually survive Thanksgiving dinner without tearing each other apart, well, it's completely unique. Okay, let's dive right in. Here's our game plan. We'll peel back the layers by looking at the foundation, the global footprint, the operating system, the unique vulnerabilities, the boiling point of conflicts, and finally, the resolution.
All right, starting off with Section 1, the foundation. What is a family business? We really have to start by breaking a super common misconception here about what actually qualifies.
It's so easy to assume any company started by an individual is a family business. But academically, the reality is a bit more specific. The absolute crucial point here is that we're not just talking about a local mom and pop shop or a solo entrepreneur. To truly be a family business, there has to be a multi-generational dimension. It's all about the anticipation, or the actual occurrence, of transferring ownership or management from one generation to the next. It's this shared dream of continuity among people connected by blood, marriage, or adoption. And this brings us to a really important distinction in how these entities actually operate on the ground. On one hand, you have a family-owned business. This is where the family holds the majority voting shares, but they might completely hand over the daily operations to outside professionals. On the flip side, we have the family-owned and managed business. This is where you really get your hands dirty. In this setup, family members are actively sitting in top management roles, giving the family direct, ultimate control over the company's everyday direction. So now that we know exactly what they are, let's talk about the sheer scale of their impact. Section 2, the global footprint. Undeniable economic power. The numbers here are absolutely staggering. According to the Confederation of Indian Industry, these multi-generational enterprises generate a massive 60 to 70% of the GDP in most developing and developed nations. Just think about that for a second. More than half of the entire world's economic value relies on organizations where the board members probably share a Diwali or Thanksgiving dinner table. That's huge. And when we zoom in on specific markets, the concentration gets even wilder. Take India, for example. A massive study of listed firms between 1990 and 2015 found that a whopping 91% of them are family firms. Together, they're contributing 26% of the total national income. I mean, they are literally the backbone of industrial and socioeconomic development. To understand how these giants function and why they definitely do not act like standard corporate entities, we need to look under the hood. Moving to Section 3, the operating system, why they work differently. Enter the famous three-circle model. Developed by Tagore and Davis back in 1982, this represents systems theory. It beautifully illustrates how the overlapping goals of the family, the business, and the ownership create this incredibly complex dynamic. Think about the founder. They're sitting right smack in the middle of all three overlapping circles. Their dad or mom at home, the CEO in the office, and the majority shareholder at the bank. Each of those roles demands a totally different mindset. And if those mindsets don't align, the entire structure can fracture. But beyond just the structural systems, there's a really powerful psychological driver happening here. You see, unlike a standard corporate CEO whose ultimate god is shareholder profit, family business leaders operate on a totally different frequency. The socio-emotional wealth theory, developed by Gomez Mejia, shows that founders will sometimes intentionally reject a super lucrative financial offer just to protect their family's identity. Their strategic decision-making prioritizes legacy and values over a quick financial win. But as you can probably guess, mixing bloodlines with bottom lines is a serious double-edged sword. That brings us to Section 4, the vulnerabilities, unique pitfalls. Because these businesses are so anchored to their history, they face structural hurdles that non-family firms just don't deal with. There's often an innovation lag simply because, well, that's how Grandpa did it. They face a restricted talent pool because, let's face it, business brilliance isn't always genetic. They might resist new technology, and crucially, they often have extremely limited financing options because they're terrified of taking on outside debt that might dilute their total control. However, those structural hurdles, they're nothing compared to the emotional toll. Sibling rivalries can literally tear an organization apart from the inside out. Toss in a lack of formal documentation causing unclear roles, biased decision-making that drives away your best non-family employees, and way too much emotional attachment, and you've got a recipe for absolute internal chaos. Passion is amazing for business, but uncontrolled emotion, not so much. When those three circles we talked about earlier collide too hard, things get explosive. Section 5, the boiling point, anatomy of a conflict. It is absolutely crucial to separate a rational business conflict from an emotional family fallout. A conflict of interest is pretty standard, decisions driven by self-interest, like a founder wanting long-term growth while minority shareholders just want immediate dividends. But a work-family conflict, that's a whole different beast. Imagine a mother having to call her own son into the office to formally put him on a performance improvement plan. She isn't just a loving parent in that moment, she's a strict boss. It creates completely impossible role expectations. And this is why what starts as a trivial disagreement over, say, office space or who got the better parking spot can instantly escalate into a full-blown crisis. It's because of these deep-seated psychological triggers. We're talking identity crises, bruised egos, and emotional insecurities that might stem all the way back to childhood. Mix in communication gaps and unequal access to family resources, and a minor business disagreement suddenly feels like a profound personal betrayal. So, considering all these emotional landmines, how on earth do these massive contributors to our global economy actually survive? Let's hit our final section, the resolution, survival strategies. Survival takes a highly structured approach to managing conflict. By following a few actionable steps, businesses can actually separate sensitive personal relationships from wise organizational decisions. First up, hire wisely. Just avoid hiring a family member if they have zero operational knowledge of the business. Second, build robust communication systems. Never, ever shove conflicts under the carpet hoping they'll magically disappear. They won't. And third, use formal family meetings to create a structured, professional environment for resolving disputes before they poison the company culture. But out of all these strategies, the ultimate safety net is establishing an efficient succession plan. You literally cannot wait until a crisis to figure out who is in charge. Succession is not just handing over the keys on retirement day. It's a years-long active process of mentoring the next generation. This preparation is the only way to make sure that hard-earned legacy doesn't simply die with the founder. It is the ultimate bridge from the past to the future. And that brings us to the core tension of every single multi-generational enterprise. I want to leave you with this provocative thought to consider the next time you buy from a legacy brand. How do they balance preserving that delicate, historical family harmony with the ruthless, forward-thinking innovation required to survive in modern business? It is a high-stakes balancing act for sure, but as we've seen today, when it works, it powers the global economy. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.